Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh. Thank you for spending some time with me today listening to the pod. We've got another great episode coming your way. I know I always say that, but it's usually true. We've got a lot of really good episodes. So today we have Connor Miller, who, let me just tell you guys something. He's a young person, but he's really accomplished. Like, he's doing some things in this world, and I'm excited to hear more about his story. And I'm going to let him introduce himself so I don't destroy his bio. Connor, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be on here. I've watched quite a bit of it and listened to a lot of the episodes, and I'm really pumped to be on here, be able to share.
I love that. Thank you for that. So tell our listeners a little bit about you and what you do.
So I do a couple things. Primarily, I manage and run a transportation company. That's my day-to-day basis, 80 hours a week type job. And then I also am in the process of teaching myself filmmaking. So I picked up a camera like 6 months ago this year, realized that I really, really liked it. And, I had a business that was doing well. So I figured I could take a little bit of time to learn something else that I was passionate about, got really into it. And in the last 6 months, it's like exploded. I've gone from doing brand deals with companies that I admire, going to different countries, working with tourism boards. So it's been really awesome.
Why did you decide to start learning filmmaking? Like, what was the transition there?
So I think the biggest thing for me is self-expression. I've always had trouble with that my whole life growing up. Nothing against my parents or anything. They were just very old school. And growing up, it was kind of like, if you have feelings, no way. Don't express yourself. Just shake it off, move on, be a tough guy. And that's really it. So I kind of lived that way into my adult life. And I realized that I became really, really depressed because of it, because I just was piling all these emotions inside and not really knowing how to get them out, to say the least. And filmmaking for me has been a way of self-expression, but also I just was really, really passionate about being able to not even just share my story, but there's just so many unique stories out there. And kind of when I got clean and everything, I started to realize that my life was just so much more than just about my accomplishments. And I wanted to be able to share other people's accomplishments as well. And I think through filmmaking is something that I've been trying to do with that.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm starting to do more video. Probably really should have started a long time ago, but it took me a while to get my confidence to do that.
There you go.
But it's interesting, I'm a total nerd. Like, I am a hardcore nerd. Like, I want to know everything in the world about everything. I want to do everything myself. And so when I started thinking about
Maybe
doing
that's why you were an addict. Me
it works
too,
out
right?
well, being an addict works out really
Love
well
it.
with entrepreneurship. It's never a dull
Yeah, you just
moment.
go all in, right?
So I bought
There you
this,
go.
I bought a gimbal, right? Which I had no idea what that was. And Smooth Mobile started advertising this gimbal, and I
Hmm.
fell in love with the thing. And I kept thinking, like, B-roll, I want to launch my YouTube channel and I want to have a really cool intro and all that stuff. Of course, I always have ideas of grandeur, right? Even though I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I have no
Oh
idea
yeah,
what to do. But
there you go.
so I got my gimbal, and here's what I realized. First of all, I love the thing. I take it with me. It travels with me. I love playing with it. But here's what's hard. It's hard to be the person doing the filming and to be the person being filmed.
Totally get it.
So I
That's
got
like one of my biggest dilemmas.
right, me too. So I have this gimbal and I walk around and I'm like, huh, like when I bought this, I really had this cool vision of somebody using it to film me in,
I
in
love
my
it.
travels and what I'm doing. And because
Everybody thinks like that though.
yeah, right. And then I didn't realize that I'm the one that has to hold it too. So
Yep.
there is some challenge there.
It's a challenging thing to get over right there for sure, because when I first picked up the camera, it was just I didn't have anybody around me that was really into it. So
Right,
it's kind of like on my own figuring it out, watching countless different tutorials to try to
right.
learn. And then, I got to a point where it kind of helped me come out of my shell a little bit. So I would say for the last 4 years, I kind of just worked. That's it. Like
Right.
I just built a business, and all I did every day, 80 to 100 hours a week, was work, 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 come home, sleep, repeat. There was a time where I was on probation and I couldn't leave the country. I couldn't travel or anything. So that was from 2015 until this year, January. And then once I got off of it, that's when I kind of picked up the camera and realized that I had this passion for exploring things.
Yeah.
And I had always wanted to do that. I just never had the ability to, because I got in trouble and I was paying for that getting in trouble.
Right.
So when I kind of had that little sense of freedom, that little sliver, it was just like something that I had been waiting for my whole life. And I kind of just ran with that passion.
And what a beautiful testament to just to recovery, right? Because there are things that I do
For sure.
now and things that I'm interested in and I can get so engulfed in. Even like talking about being a nerd, like I joke about it. I'm a total tech nerd, like I build all my own websites and I'm 100% self-taught. And I
Love
just
it.
love that stuff, but I'm doing things now that never in a million years did I even know I was interested in
Right.
even my early sobriety, right? But especially not in my drinking life. Like it's just so cool to
No,
have that evolution and be able to explore things and to have the ability to follow through and
there you
actually
go.
see
That's
if I
it.
like things. Yes, it's so
Right.
cool to try it and even see if I like it.
Well, because I'm sure you had like same kind of dilemma. For me, it was more that I was kind of like scared to try things because I had no belief in myself. So it was like, you know what? I shouldn't even try this. There's no way I'm going to be good at it. There's so many people that already do this. So why should it be me? Right. And then I kind of changed that question around, and it's like, why not
Why
me?
not?
Why
That's
shouldn't
right.
it be me? Well, it's really at the end of the day, it's up to me if it's going to be me. And that confidence comes over time, year after year, and just trying different things and failing a lot, and really staying clean the whole time is what gives you the confidence, because when you look back at it, anything that you fail at is not even close to what you already beat with the addiction.
That's the damn truth right there. Yeah, I say that all the time too. It's so funny to me, like what we will go through and what we will endure as a result of our drinking and using. And then, like, we get clean and sober, and all of a sudden we want to be sissies. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this is
Yeah, right, there you
uncomfortable.
go.
I don't know how to do this. It's like, really? Like, you would show up at the dope man's house in the worst neighborhood in town at
There you go.
2 a.m and that didn't bother you, but now you're scared to go to an AA meeting? Like, really?
Right. There you go. I've had the same thing, but for me, it's more like when I get frustrated, I have to realize like I can work through things because I've already worked through so many things. Like it could be as
Right.
simple as the directions for, I have a newborn baby, and the directions for something that is putting it together for the baby. And it's like
Yeah.
all pictures and there's no instructions. And it's like, how the hell do they expect you to do this? Right. And then it's just like for a moment, you have to take that breath and realize, like, okay, I've done so much more than this.
Yes, for
Okay. So let's
sure.
just calm down and we can get it done.
For sure. And you're right too in that fear. The first half of my adult life, really, I was just riddled with fear and I wouldn't do anything because I was so fearful of everything. I was scared of screwing things up. I was scared of being judged. I was scared of being rejected. I was scared of making a fool of myself, like whatever. I was scared of everything. And like my world just got very, very small because I had so
Yeah.
much fear. And the truth is, like, with failure, and this is huge in entrepreneur world for sure, but it's huge in recovery and life in general too, is that you cannot get good at anything without screwing it up. Like that's how you
No.
learn. So for me, like failure is not even a bad thing. I just feel like I can't get good at something until I start doing it and figure out even how I need to get better. So
Right.
everything's not going to go perfectly. It's not going to work out all the time. You know what I mean? It's just not that big of a deal. You just keep moving and keep trying.
I always tell the people that work for me, I always tell them to fail early, fail often, and fail forward. Because
Right.
failure is just
Yes.
going to be a part of that next step to success.
That's
And
right.
if you come in afraid to fail, then you're never going to get to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, that fear will hold you back. It'll hold you back from
Exactly.
doing anything.
For me, a lot of that fear had to do with I was so concerned about everyone else's opinion of me besides my own opinion of myself. And I was living my life based on making other people happy or having other people's judgment, and doing the things that I thought like my parents wanted me to do, all that kind of stuff. And then one day I really realized that I was so unhappy because I was living my life for everyone else in my life besides myself.
Right. Right. So, how old were you when you first realized you had a problem with substance?
17. I was 17 years old.
Wait,
17
how
was the
old are
first
you
time.
now?
I'm 26 now.
Okay. Sorry, we just have to
So
have a little frame of reference.
yeah, 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 sure, sure. So I was 17. The first time I used any kind of drug was just marijuana. I was 16. And then, I was in a relationship at the time that was very codependent and just very unhealthy because the relationships that I had seen growing up were my parents. My parents were both alcoholics, both sober now. But growing up, that's the kind of household that I lived in. That's the kind of
Mhm.
relationship that I saw that I thought was normal. So I was in that kind of relationship at the time. And she was using drugs as well. We were both getting high all the time. I kind of tried drugs for the first time because I didn't feel cool enough. She was a little bit older than me, so it was like, oh man, she does all this cool stuff, so like I got to be cool too, so let me go ahead and try it. And then after trying it, it was when I just had that feeling. The first drug that I ever tried, the actual drug besides marijuana, was just pain pills. So it's kind of like that
Mhm.
feeling of just numbness, where I didn't think about my childhood. I didn't think about all the things that were always on my mind. And after that, I actually had surgery from playing baseball. I had surgery on my shoulder and I was given pain pills. And so I abused those. And then from that time on, it was just seeking, 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 finding ways to get it. I was prescribed Adderall when I was in high school. So I would trade that for other people that had just gotten surgeries, pain pills and stuff, because everybody in high school wants to take that kind of stuff. Everybody's trying to get into college and all that. But everything kind of skyrocketed for me super quick. I would say within 9 months of using drugs for the first time, I was intravenously using drugs.
Wow, that's really fast.
Yeah, definitely.
And opiates?
Opiates, yeah. So
Yeah,
first it was
yeah.
just the Roxys and
Opiates do hijack you faster than anything else.
oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, it was mostly opiates. There was in high school, of course, like you have those party drugs when you go to the parties and stuff like that. But my addiction didn't really get bad until after high school. It was more at that time. It was like I was using every week, but it
Mhm,
was like I
mhm.
still played sports. I was functioning.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. My addiction didn't really get bad until after I actually went to rehab for the first two times.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't go crazy, really. I call it going crazy. I didn't completely lose my mind until I was in my 30s. Like high school was nothing for me. I didn't even really start drinking until I was about 20 probably.
Gotcha.
And drinking obviously is a much slower progression, I think, than certainly slower than opiates for sure,
Sure.
because opiates do they take you over fast.
Right.
But it took me a long time to get to where I got.
Hmm.
It took a lot of practice to get to that level. But yeah, I didn't really go crazy until I was about 30 and I got sober at 33. So it was a long journey. But
Okay.
it's interesting too because I was never even interested in alcohol. I never had an interest in drugs ever.
It's so funny. I was the same way.
Yeah, and
I was so against it because I saw my parents.
right. Right. So see, I have a parent who had drug issues, so I never wanted to do drugs and I thought alcohol
Right.
was so different. Little did I know I ended up exactly the same. I just had a different drug of
It's
choice.
so funny. Same thing. In 10th grade, my friends that I was hanging out with started smoking weed and I dropped my friends. And this was in 10th grade before I had ever tried it. Right.
Right,
And then
right.
sure enough, 2 years later, they're not friends with me now because now I'm
Yeah.
over here shooting up.
Yeah, right, right. It's so crazy how it all happens. But it took me a long time to get out of control. And it was a slow process, but it was also super painful. You know what I mean? Like I can look back on my whole 20s now and where in a lot of ways it was super fun. I lived in Los Angeles. I was a bartender and I was bartending all over Hollywood and Beverly Hills and I kind of had this really kick-ass life in a lot of ways, but on the inside, like legit, I was just so sad. Like I
Every
was so
day. Yep.
broken every day.
Sure.
I had no self-esteem and the choices that you make in your life when you're living from that place of brokenness and sadness, the choices that you make obviously aren't good, right? So it's just the
Right.
domino effect of kind of breaking you down as a human.
And then once you make the choices, you wonder why you did it, and
Yeah,
then you do
right.
it again because you don't want to
Right.
think about why
And
you
then you
did it.
have all the guilt and shame. Like, I remember so many times, like, going, "What is wrong with you? Like, why are you picking those guys to date? Or why are you doing this or doing that? Like, what is wrong with you?"
Yeah,
But
I get
I
it for
didn't
sure.
understand then that it was just self esteem. I just didn't have
Hmm.
I had no self esteem.
Right.
So, what has been for you? What has been the lowest moment of your sobriety? And how did you get through it without relapse?
So I would say I can pinpoint it right off the top of my head immediately. The lowest point of my sobriety actually was when I was making the most money. It was when the business that I had with my dad was doing the best that it was doing. Everything in my life was the best that it had ever been, right? Surface level. And then I just realized that at that point was when I realized that I was living my life for everyone else but myself. And I was so unhappy. I was so happy on the outside, and everybody, oh, you have all this stuff. Like, you should
Right.
be so happy. It's like, look, at that moment, that day, I remember I was driving to the office and I realized that I was a fucking idiot. And you know why? Because I thought money was going to buy me happiness. And
Right.
I realized at that time that everything that I thought I knew in my life was just completely twisted. And at that moment was actually when I decided to go to counseling. And I went to counseling, and I still go ever since then. It's been years now that I've gone, and it's been a game changer for my life. Like, everything in my life, I would say I could owe it to counseling
Yeah.
for
Wow,
sure.
that's big. I went to a counselor one time in my early 20s. I lived in Los Angeles, and I had kind of started to understand that I drank differently than my friends.
Sure.
I drank alcoholically in that I drank every day, but I wasn't drinking out of control. I wasn't blacking out. I wasn't getting DUIs. It took many, many years for me to get
Hmm.
like that. But I knew that I always say my relationship with alcohol was different than other people,
Right.
right? Like, my friends were happy to go home at the end of the night and
You
everybody
want to
like,
keep
"Hey,
going.
bye." And I was like, why are they going home when we could
Yeah.
drink more?
There you go.
Like, I just knew I was more attached to it. I just wanted to spend more time with it than other people did.
I get it.
And my boyfriend at the time, however it came up, I'm sure we were probably fighting about something, and it came up to, like, go to counseling, right? So I seek out this counselor and I go, and I was so new, like, to the drinking game, that I was actually honest about how much I drank, right? So when she asked me how much I drank, I was honest about it because I didn't think I was doing anything crazy.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I told her the truth. And so she goes, so she goes at the end of the session, our first session, she goes, "Well, I think the first thing we have to address is your alcohol problem." And
Has anyone ever told you you had a problem?
I remember thinking, like, what is she talking about? So my boyfriend picks me up. I get in the car and he's like, "How did it go?" I go, "Well, obviously I can't go back to her. She has no idea what she's talking about."
That's amazing.
I just had no idea. I had
The
no
lies we tell
idea.
ourselves.
Right. I just didn't know. Like, I knew that I liked it, but it wasn't out of control, right? And I
Sure.
think that was a lot of my vision of alcoholism in my head, was a person that's out of control, like
Right.
sloppy, falling down,
Belligerent.
belligerent, right? And I worked
Right.
in bars. Like, I was a bartender my whole adult life. So I saw alcoholics,
You
and
just
I
could hold
just
it down way better than everyone else.
Right, right. Well, and I didn't, especially in my early and mid 20s, like, I didn't drink a ton, but I drank every day, right? I just
Gotcha.
didn't drink a huge quantity.
Hmm.
So I wasn't losing control and I wasn't having blackouts and going through those things. But yeah, I will never forget that poor woman, fast forward 20 years, and I was a drug and alcohol counselor for many years, and
Yeah.
and like saying the same thing to people. And sometimes I would
It's
just shake
funny
my
though,
head and
because
I'm like,
like
there's no way they get it. Like, it's going in one ear and out the other. I
I
remember.
completely understand where you're coming from because I was so anti-counseling, right? Because growing up, my mom's religion was like therapy. Okay. So it was like from 12 years old when my parents were first getting divorced, it was like therapy every week.
Right.
My mom was dragging me to therapy, different psychiatrists. This is wrong with me. I have this disorder. What are we going to do to make this kid happy? Give him a pill,
Yeah. Right.
all that kind of stuff. So in my adult life, I had sworn to myself that I was not going to do any of that. I wasn't going to do therapy. I could figure it out on my own. I had got myself this far, so I can do it on my own. right? And I realized that I had such a twisted view about therapy and counseling because from a young age, I was forced into it. And I didn't go in
Mm,
willingly with an open mind, willing to change. So going into it in my adult life, I still was kind of like, I don't really want to do this, but I don't know what else to try. So
mhm.
it was kind of like, let me go ahead and try this. I have enough confidence in myself to get through it. So let's just try it. And maybe 6 months in, the first 6 months, I hated it, but I went every week because I made a commitment to myself that I was going to try to do this to get better. I mean, I was still clean at the time, but it was just my thoughts. Just I still had
Yeah,
shit
of
brain. It was
course.
terrible.
Yeah.
So I went every week for about 6 months, and then finally I had a breakthrough where I realized that I could actually do something with this. Like I could actually change my life, turn the way that I was feeling around. It didn't have to. The way I was feeling didn't have to be a result of how everyone else around me was.
Right.
So after the counseling, after the 6 months, and I actually gave it a try, it was like my whole view on it changed, and I've pushed it to people that work for me. Guy that worked for me, he's like my partner, right, every single day, and he was going through a tough time in his life. He was getting divorced, him and his wife, and he'll be the first one to preach about counseling. So I feel comfortable even talking about it. But I was like, hey, man, look, I've been going to this guy for a long time. I think you should give it a try. Same kind of upbringing as me. If you have
Right.
feelings, you're weak, that kind of stuff. He would cry in front of me after work. And I would say, look, man, you are not weak because you have feelings. You have to figure out how to not control these, but you have to figure out how to process everything.
Right.
So he ended up going to counseling and like changed his life, turn it around. 1 year, he's about to propose to his new girlfriend, like killing it. Everything's great.
Nice. Yeah.
So that, I mean, that if you ever hear me talk about counseling, it's because I'm just such a big believer in it. And there's so many different types, like the counselors that I've been to a few, right? And of course, you're
Right.
not going to vibe with all of them, right? The
Right.
first ones you go to, you might not like, but at least give it a try. The guy that I went to at first, I didn't think I was going to like him. He's like 85 years old. I was thinking, how could he relate to me at all?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then it's just the willingness to actually hear it out, though, and see if you can get something from it.
Which really, that willingness is the deciding factor in how much help you're going to get in any situation. If
Yes,
you're willing
completely.
to show up and you're willing to be open minded, then that's how you're going to get results in anything. I love
Definitely.
that. I always wanted the results from counseling. Like I wanted to feel
Yeah.
better. I just didn't want to have to go sit there and talk about it.
Yeah. It's funny because I say this all the time. So, for a long time in my life, I was the person who loved the feeling of being motivated, right? Everybody loves that feeling of motivation, that instant of like, yes, I'm going to get this done, right? But then after that fleeting moment, most people don't want to actually put in the work. So,
Yes.
for my whole life up until maybe 4 years ago, I was the guy who loved being motivated until it came time to pay the dues, and then
Yeah.
it was, "No, I'm not doing this."
Well, yeah. As soon as you realize there's no instant gratification, it is much less attractive.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So I just did this year was something that was on my 2019 list, and I'm 47, and I just did EMDR, trauma therapy.
Okay.
And it was such an interesting process. And I'm a helping professional, right? Like I've been a counselor, I went to social work school and all of that stuff. I studied psychology and neuropsychology. I love all of it. But that allowed me to process through a lot of my kind of regular stuff. I could process through pretty well on my own,
Right.
and I've been a life coach for a decade, like, and coaching skills, to be honest with you, all the stuff I've learned as a life coach, all those tools and exercises that you do with people as a coach, that stuff has been invaluable to me
Oh,
in my
yeah,
growth.
definitely.
It's such positive forward motion and really allowing you to get to know yourself and all that good
Because you're
stuff.
learning the whole time too.
Yeah, right, right. So all of that, like depression, anxiety, like I've been able to get through most of that stuff pretty well. But what I realized a few years ago is that I really had some deep seated trauma stuff. And I was fearful for a while. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't quite ready
Mhm.
to dig into it. And I
Right.
put it on my list for
It's
2019.
super daunting.
It is. It's probably feels more daunting than it actually is.
Right, because you just make it this whole big thing, then you don't really even know if it's
Yeah,
gonna be
right,
that.
right. And I had a really fantastic lady that went through the process with me, and I did it for a few months, every week, most of the time. And it was just a really fascinating thing. Now, I will say for me, I feel like I'm kind of a late bloomer. So I've had a lot of clients over the years do EMDR for trauma and have pretty fast results. And even some of my girlfriends.
Sure.
I did not have that
Mhm.
experience, I will say. Like for me, I think for a long time I was going every week and then I started going every other week because I needed some time to kind of let my brain settle and to start feeling like something was
Hmm.
different, right? So I could feel some of the
Sure.
results. And I'm so grateful that I did it. And I'm so grateful that I had the open mind because it really has, even though I don't understand it fully, it really has cleared a lot of the heaviness that I was feeling and things that I really felt like were holding me back.
I love what you said when you said, even though I don't understand it fully, because I believe that is a killer for a lot of people
Right.
because they're so afraid of what they don't understand. So if it's something that they can't grasp for some odd reason, I'm not going to try this because you know what? Like, that's not going to work for me. I
Right.
know it's not going to work for
Right.
me. And that'll be kind of how it is just because you're scared of not knowing what it is. Like, even my father growing up, my dad was against therapy when my mom would take me and all that stuff. And I actually just got him recently to agree to go with me. And it's been, I don't know, 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
So, and that's such huge growth for me looking up to him as a role model now because I see that willingness, that open
Yes.
mindedness, like that. And especially with him being a partner with me in business, like it's great for our business as well because if we're not on the same page, our business doesn't do well.
Right. Yeah, it's so cool. I'm glad that you're so pro getting help because I think a lot of people are a little weirded out by it, but for me it's just part of that journey. Like I always want to be working toward being the best version of myself,
For sure.
especially in recovery. Like I've been granted this opportunity to have a whole second life in one lifetime. I get to be
Yeah,
a whole entirely different person than I was my first 30 plus years.
sure.
And I just don't wanna waste a moment of that, like, I
No,
always
not at
wanna be
all.
feeling better and doing better and being able to
I
be of
love that you said that.
service. Yeah.
I love that you said that because one of the big things that I tell people all the time is, you're gonna die, and that sentence can sound like, "What are you talking about, man? That's kind of weird. Why would you say that?"
Yeah.
Because the deal is, one day you are gonna die. So what about all those moments where you could have, should have, would have done all these things, right? Instead of living like, "Oh, tomorrow I could do it," or "Oh," it's the same thing when you're trying to get sober, right? It's like, "Oh, this is my last one tonight." But you never have that on the forefront of your mind that like, hey, today really really could be my last day. Something could happen
Right.
where today there's no more.
Yeah. There is
So
no
I think living your
tomorrow.
life like that is like totally freeing
Yeah.
because at the end of the day you realize that hey, you're going to live your life to its fullest potential every single day because you might not know if you're going to get another one.
Right. I heard one time too, I'm really big on listening to motivational things, inspirational things, and I do motivational speaking stuff too. And I'm always listening to that stuff every day. I spend conscious time just feeding my brain good positive
But
information.
you're filling your gas tank. That's
Yes,
great.
yeah, for sure. And I heard one guy say, this was probably earlier this year, I think I was listening to something on YouTube and he said we all have the same 24 hours every day.
Yep,
The difference is how people choose to spend them.
exactly.
And I love that because I definitely listen. My absolute default mode, I am one of the laziest people you will ever meet. Like, I literally could probably just sit and like and lay on the couch and like watch Netflix until I die. Like, I
That's
would be,
hilarious.
if somebody would like feed me some tacos and ice cream every once in a while,
There you go.
maybe a pizza here and there, like I literally could
Make sure they
be,
let your dog out.
yeah, right. Like I literally could be the person that just never got off the couch ever.
There you go.
And that's how I was like in my drinking life, right? Like I would work, and when I wasn't working, I was laying around being hungover and lazy.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I have that inside of me, and I have to always be pushing
It's
myself.
great
And
that you know that though about yourself,
yeah, for
because that
sure. And
self-awareness makes you get to that point where you're pushing yourself.
it also makes me put systems in place in my life to make
Sure.
things very easy to
Yeah.
do. you
Yeah,
know?
I get it, for sure. That's great.
Which I had no idea how valuable that was gonna be, like, with the podcast and my Facebook group, because 'cause I'm always giving everybody the life hacks.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
nothing I do is super time consuming, I promise you, because I don't have the attention span
There you
and I'm
go.
lazy, so it all has to be a life hack. But, yeah, I just always hear those words, like, everybody has the same 24 hours every day, it's just how you choose to spend yours,
For
and that
sure.
really keeps me moving forward and doing the things and trying not to waste a lot of time because I'm blessed to have it.
Right, exactly. Are you a Gary Vee fan?
Oh, of course. I love
Yeah, so
Gary
like
Vee.
huge Gary Vee fan here, and I think a lot of stuff that I learned about, managing a business, I actually learned from just watching Gary Vee for years,
Yeah.
because I didn't really have a teacher. That's what's been so hard for me, being a person who actually is supposed to be kind of like in this role of a coach and a mentor. It's super hard when you didn't really have that and you kind of learned all this stuff on your own. You don't really know how to
Right.
reciprocate that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
that's been a big challenge for me in my life, is being a teacher, because I feel like it's the thing that I suck at most.
I started watching Gary Vee on YouTube in the very beginning of his YouTube
Yeah,
days when there were only like 5 people on YouTube.
2008.
And it was crazy, right? And like he was doing wine library and he was this totally like obnoxious, when you think of wine
Oh yeah,
people, they're like snooty and all that. And here's this dude from New Jersey. He's harsh, he's brash. And I mean, he was hilarious. Like I was so excited when he started writing books because he really is like, I probably can't function at the pace that he does, but I'm not far
yeah,
behind.
sure, sure,
I'm not far
sure.
behind. But yeah, I learn a lot from him. And I think one of my biggest challenges in leadership and teaching, I'm really comfortable in that realm. One of my biggest challenges is finding people who can lead me and who
Yeah,
can
yeah,
teach
yeah,
me. That's
sure.
always a challenge for me is coming across people that have gotten farther or know more. And I totally get what you're saying too, like being self-taught, because I feel like there's certain areas where I know so much. And then there's other things that are the most like rudimentary, elementary things that I don't
Sure.
know because I'm self-taught. So I didn't learn in a linear fashion. You
No,
know what I mean?
I
So it's
get it.
it's kind of fascinating, but it's
It is. I
fun.
think I think being self-taught is actually really advantageous though, because at the end of the day, you put in all the effort to learn all these things, right? So who's to say that you're
Yeah.
not going to put in that effort with everything that you do? If you take that same mindset into everything you do in your life, you're going to live a life probably beyond the dreams that you ever thought you could.
No question. No question. So what has your recovery journey been? Like when you decided to get sober, what did you do to make sure you stayed sober?
So I got sober a few times. um, so I was in and out of rehab and jail from 18 to 22. And within those times it was more of the, I wasn't really ready to give it up. I still felt like I was so young, and like this wasn't really like detrimental to my adult life. Like I was 18 years old, who cares if I use drugs for a couple years, right? Like I'm still going to be able to do whatever I want to do. And at the end of the day, like I realized that that was just like the biggest excuse ever. Instead of now how do I live my life every day thinking I'm going to die tomorrow.
Right.
So it's like totally 180. But I think what got and kept me clean was me understanding the concept of empathy. And the story that I'll tell you that actually brought that to my attention was I had gotten out of jail after being in jail for 13 months, and I was on 3 years of probation. I got out of jail. I was kind of still partying, hanging around with the wrong people. I was drinking, doing cocaine every so often on probation at the time. So just to give you the context. And I was coming home from a party one night, and I was driving home just absolutely obliterated out of my mind. I had been working for maybe like 3 months, and I had saved up enough money to put a down payment on a car. So I bought a car, first car I'd ever bought with my own money or anything. Driving home, and I get pulled over, right? This is like a week after I bought the car. I had just started having a steady job and all that. So like my life was just starting to get a little bit better.
Mhm.
And then it was like that slap on the like, wow, look, you need to figure out what you're going to do. So I got pulled over. The cop asked me for my license and registration. He asked me if I've been drinking. I told him yes. Cause I already knew, like in my mind, I was like already accepted that I was going to jail. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm done. This is like, there's nothing I can do to get out of this right now. Like I'm not that smooth. so so I told him I had been drinking, took my license. He went to go run it, and I'm sure he was able to see that I was on probation. He
Mhm.
saw my record and all that. He comes back to my car. He looks at me with this look that I've never seen in my life until that moment, and he asked me if I could get someone to come pick me up. So at that moment, I was like, what is this guy talking about? Like, can I get somebody to go pick me up? I had always had negative experiences with law enforcement, not because
Yeah.
of law enforcement, but because of the way that I acted.
Right.
So my view on it at that time was super twisted because I had blamed all of my issues on everyone else besides myself.
Yeah.
Um, so when he asked me that, I was like, yeah, sure. So my brother comes and gets me. The next day I woke up, I deleted all my contacts out of my phone. I decided that day that I was going to change my whole life. From that day forward, I never used again. And I mean, so here's my thing. My recovery, I feel like, is a little bit different because I'm not like super by the books. I don't go to meetings. I'm not opposed to it. I
Right.
won't knock anybody for doing it. It's
Right.
just for me personally, it didn't work for me. My recovery and me being clean was just completely about my willingness and having that belief that I could create a better life for myself without drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
So for me, like when I say clean, I'm talking about I haven't used heroin, hard drugs, anything like that. So for me, I don't know what your belief is like with the recovery and everything, but I smoke marijuana every so often, right? But I'm not like, so I would still say I'm clean from my drugs that gave me a hard time in my life.
Mhm.
And then I realized though, like in my life that I didn't have a drug problem. I had a personal emotional problem within myself. And that's why I was using drugs to
Right.
try to get rid of that problem. So the counseling is what really helped me a lot, kind of reverse engineer the way that I was built, the way that I thought.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you like a little bit of context about me and my recovery and how what I believe to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
recovery, because I know it's very different than a standard.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm kind of the standard, and I kind of did a lot of things not very standard too.
Sure,
So
sure,
even in the rooms of 12 steps, I did do the
for sure.
standard. So I get
But
that.
I'm not opposed to the
And I
12 steps
think,
at all. So like I don't want anyone to take it out of
right.
context. Like it helps a lot of people.
Yes.
I've been there,
Yes.
done that, and it did help me for a while.
Right. And I love to, like, I have so much respect for the fact that you say it like that, because a lot of times people think that if they don't want to be a part of AA, they have to bash
No,
it. Like if they don't want to go, they have to like talk shit on it, like it's a bad thing. And
that's a
I
personal
so
problem with them.
appreciate. Right, right. But I just so appreciate that you're just like, yeah, I mean, I went, it was cool. It's just not my thing. And you're not saying it doesn't work, and you're not saying it's bad.
No, I mean, I've seen it work for many people that are still sober 30 years from now that go every week.
Yeah. And I think it is a little bit different for everybody, but you're right. It's your level of willingness. I say this on the podcast, but also a lot in my Facebook group where, because there's a ton of people that listen to my podcast that are not 12-step people, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
I'm totally fine with that. It doesn't bother me at all, because the truth is, it doesn't matter what room you sit in. If you want to be better and you want to make your life better and you have a commitment to being better, then do that. It doesn't matter what room you're in. It
Sure.
doesn't matter what book you're reading. You know what I mean? It's your commitment and your willingness that ultimately will make all the difference. And even on the professional side, as an addiction professional, listen, when we look at success rates and statistics for successful sobriety, whatever that looks like, like every study does it a little bit differently,
Sure.
but the stats for long-term sobriety are not great. And the fascinating thing about it, I mean, it's sad that the statistics are not that great, right? It's not in our favor. A lot of people don't stay sober. But the thing that's fascinating about it is that the statistics are the same regardless of whether you go to treatment, don't go to
Right.
treatment, go to AA, don't go to AA. Like the numbers are the same
Sure.
regardless of what your approach is. And which to me further affirms that it's not necessarily about the room. Now, I think that AA kind of gave me a cheat sheet.
Sure.
Like they did a lot of research and figured a lot of things out. It gave me a social group, which was really important
Yeah,
to
that's
me.
definitely important.
So, yeah, so it definitely had some of the groundwork laid out for me so I could just step into a new life, which
Right.
I'm so grateful for. But yeah, it's
I
not
think
it's not about the room.
the main thing I realized was when I went to counseling, right, was that was my whole problem, my whole life was that I never really knew how to express myself, and I never really knew what I was feeling. I was just feeling all of these things, and I didn't know how to identify or process them, and it just piled until I would have these outbursts of anger. I was a very angry person growing up because I didn't really know, I didn't have an outlet. So going
Yeah.
through all that and kind of like reverse engineering the way that I felt from a kid into how I wanted to be as an adult. And every day I work on myself with, self-awareness, and I analyze what I'm doing. At the end of the day, I think, what could I have done better? It's not like, oh, this person did this, so this is what happened to me.
Yeah. People don't have a clear understanding of this, but the sobriety part, putting down drugs and alcohol is just the first part. It's recovery that
Right.
is everything that comes next, right?
Sure.
Where I have to realize that putting down the drink or drug is not going to magically fix me. I
No,
used substance because I did not like how I felt.
there you go.
I used it to change how I felt. So what happens is you put the drink and drug down, and then you got to figure out what you're feeling.
There you go.
And you have to start fixing all of that stuff. And that's the only way to stay sober and
Sure.
to not go back to substance or another unhealthy behavior. Because
I
there's plenty of us that will then switch to sex addiction or
Oh, yeah,
gambling
yeah,
or
yeah, definitely.
gaming, or, you'll just trade addictions if you don't figure
Sure.
out that underlying emotional
And I
stuff.
think a lot of people don't realize that it's not really about getting sober, it's about creating a life for yourself that's worth being sober for.
Yeah, well, you won't stay sober if you don't do that.
Right. So, like me, the reason I'm saying, like, oh, I don't go to meetings and stuff like that is because every day I wake up creating the life that I want to live that's going to keep me clean.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting too. I think everybody has this idea that when you go to 12-step meetings, like you have to go there the rest of your life. But really the point of 12-step meetings is you go to get your life back.
There you go. Yeah, I like that.
You go to get to a place that you can go out and live your life,
Sure.
like you don't have to remain in the confines of the rooms
Sure.
forever, we're not holding you captive. Now, we definitely, like, I certainly don't go to meetings today like I went when I was new.
Oh, yeah,
They
definitely.
said 90 meetings in 90 days. I don't think I missed a meeting for 5 years, to be
Sure.
honest. Like, I was in and I loved it and I had a
Hmm.
blast, and all my friends were there and I loved my life. It was so much fun, but I'm not doing that today, and we definitely have a thing about being of service,
Yeah,
like always
sure.
freely give what was freely given to you, right? So I will
That's huge.
always give my time and my energy and my knowledge, and I will always be a part of those rooms to be there for the new person coming in the door.
You feel responsible to it because of the gift you have.
For sure. And it's so necessary, right? If everybody went and got well and stopped going, it wouldn't exist anymore. You
Right,
there
there you
is
go.
there is a sense of responsibility, and like I will never bite the hand that
Sure.
feeds me.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's not like you have to go and stay there for the rest of your life. You go to get your life back and to go live a good
Sure.
life where you're not scared of everything anymore.
Right, yeah, definitely the fear is a huge part, like, there was a time in my life where I didn't even wanna go anywhere, like, I was so scared to even leave my house because
For
I
sure.
just had, like, overwhelming anxiety, like, I used to have panic attacks, and now I'm like, "Panic attack? What the heck is that?" You
Yeah.
know? But, I mean, yeah, it's crazy how far you can come from that paralyzing fear to just being, like, such an outgoing, willing person, and the service is huge too. I feel like every day I'm looking at what can I do to make the people around me life better.
That's exactly right. Amen to that. It's interesting. Anxiety for me has probably been my biggest obstacle in my life and in my sobriety.
Mhm.
My depression's always been pretty manageable. My listeners hear me talk about this stuff all the time. I've never, like, I can definitely have some down days, even weeks, really, but I think I have an energy and a faith. Like, this is a faith thing too. I know even when I'm down, I know it's going to pass.
Yeah,
And I know I'm down for a reason.
sure.
I know there's something to learn, there's something to figure out. So my down is mostly manageable, but my anxiety at times is literally debilitating
Yeah,
still. And for whatever reason, I'm sure there's 1,000 things that play a role in that, stress and hormones, and God only knows. But
sure.
food for sure plays a big role in that for me. But I will get in those modes of like not wanting to leave my house. Like, I'm a classic
Yeah,
isolator, and my work is very isolating a lot of the
sure.
time. And I can come in and like lock myself in my house and not leave for days and be perfectly
Mhm.
fine. And a few years ago, I was pretty down, going through a lot of stuff, and I caught myself really letting it get the best of me, that not wanting to leave the house. And I caught myself really turning into fear
Yeah.
of leaving the house and a little like agoraphobic, like I started to get really unhealthy with it. And I literally immediately like reached out to 3 or 4 of my closest people, and I made coffee dates, and
Yeah.
I'm going to meet you at a meeting this day. Like, I had to get out of my house because I was getting really unhealthy with it.
I think I've definitely struggled with that a little bit. I think my biggest thing is whenever I feel any kind of fear and whenever I have anxiety come on, I always default to, okay, I may feel this way, but the only thing that's going to get me out of my head is by actually getting out and doing something for somebody else. So
For
that's why
sure.
service is huge. I
Yes.
think service actually
Yes.
can, in a way, service can actually really really help keep you sober.
For sure. And I think something people really don't realize with service too is service, being of service and living in a mindset of service is what helps rebuild your self
Oh
confidence
yeah.
too. Like that's what starts to allow me to feel good about
Sure.
myself as a human being and to start to undo some of that
Right.
damage and how much shame I felt for how I was when I was drunk and how I used people and mistreated people and lied to people. Being of service and putting yourself in that position, having a goal to always make somebody else's day better, that's
Yeah.
how you start to feel good about yourself again.
Exactly.
That's invaluable.
It's funny because like service is actually so selfish because it makes you feel so good,
Yeah.
right? Selfish in the
Yeah.
best way possible, obviously,
Right.
but like
Right.
people should realize that the service is actually you're doing yourself a service.
It's huge. It's so powerful. So, what would you say is your favorite thing about being a sober person now?
I think my favorite thing is actually the look on people's faces when I actually tell them my story. No, that is a funny thing though. But I would say my favorite thing is actually being able to offer the things that I have to people that that are going through similar situations that I went through, that are actually either around my same age or around the age that I was, going through all the stuff around. My favorite thing is actually being able to share my story. Really,
Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't really even get that way until this year because I had this idea about social media and like, oh, it's so negative, like I'm not even going to be on there. Why would I do that when all there is negativity? And then I realized that I was like just completely giving into it instead of realizing that I could push positivity on there
That's
on a
right.
different
That's
level. I
right.
could build an audience to a point where like the things that I was saying could reach people. And I think what keeps me going and my favorite thing about being clean now is actually being able to help people.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense for me there's a sense of responsibility in that too, and I felt this from day 1 when I got sober. I felt like I no longer had the right to self-destruct because then I had made a promise to my family.
Yeah,
At that point,
sure.
or not a promise, but I had made a commitment. I had made a commitment to be sober and at that point I no longer had the right to really screw things up and just be a jackass. Like I
Yeah,
had
I
to
get
really
it for sure.
there was an enormous sense of responsibility and like I have to get it together now. Like I can't be this way for my family who loves me. And I had, a really young niece at the time. I have another one now, but I would always think of her and just like who I wanted to be for her. And I didn't want to be a drunken disaster of a human,
Yeah,
you know, like I wanted to be a good person that
sure.
she could love and depend on and all those good things.
I think what really kicked it in for me with sharing my story on the internet was this year. I have a woman that works with me who who's known me. She's older than me, who's known me since I was a kid. And this year, her son passed away from an overdose, and he was my age. So when that happened, I was just like it hit me in a way that I didn't really know it could, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Like I didn't really know him or anything, but I know her and she's just like the most wonderful person ever. So when I heard the news, I like lost it. I was just like bawling, crying, like I didn't even know how to control my emotions for like a day. And then I started to go back and think about my life, and I started to think about all the times that it could have been me. And at that point is when I really realized that like I had a responsibility to the world because I was still here.
Yeah. Well, and for me as a drunk, because what ultimately got me sober is I had a car accident and I hit another car at 70 miles an hour.
Wow.
And so I think about that too as a drunk, like I will take other people out with me.
Yeah,
And then that's ultimately what got me sober. It's
sure.
like I didn't care if I hurt myself, right? But the realization that I could legitimately hurt somebody else, I was like, "Whoo, no way, I'm out."
Right.
Like I can't. That is not who I am.
I think for me too, like with sharing my story, I think living your truth is like the biggest freeing thing that you can do. For me, like I didn't want people to really know about my story because I felt like it was such a weakness for the longest time until I started to live my truth. And then once I started to do that, I realized that it was the most empowering thing that I have.
No question. We are the strongest people ever built.
Sure, I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Addicted people are the strongest people ever. We just have to keep that in mind when we're going through tough things.
Oh yeah. Even I mean, even when you're not going through tough things, even when like your business is doing great and all you want to do is work, 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 but you have a baby at home. Like I go through those things
Right.
every day. Like that's my new struggle. My new struggle isn't addiction. It's like, hey, am I working too much?
That's your new
Yeah.
balancing
Right.
act. Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting too on the Gary Vee thing. It's interesting to hear him talk about parenthood and
Right.
being a husband and some of those
Sure.
struggles too. And I didn't have kids. I didn't ever really want to have kids. I knew that pretty young. Like I love to
Yeah.
travel. I'm very much a
Definitely.
free spirit and I love kids, but I'm really glad that they don't
There
live
you
at my
go.
house. They're fabulous, but I just knew that wasn't going to be a part of my story, and I'm so grateful now that I've embraced business in the way that I have and am so in love with building business and all that stuff. And I think, oh my gosh, I would have absolutely been that
Oh yeah.
parent that was
I'm
like
dealing with that
never,
right now. I get it completely.
like
I understand.
I would totally be that parent that was just never there, that missed everything, that had to leave early from everything for a phone call. And
And like for me is like I'm younger, so obviously I'm at this point where I think I can just work my ass off
yeah,
every day, like, and I'm fine, but it's also the balancing act with wife and
yeah,
child, and putting all that work in when you're young. Like I feel like I'm doing that for a reason, so I can be at those events, so I don't have to leave
yes,
early,
yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
So it's definitely a battle though every day.
That's pretty smart though, truly. But it is too like it is setting some healthy boundaries. And that's something I've really had to come to terms with this
Sure.
year. Really having some times that you just put the phone down and
Yeah.
separate and spend that connected time with the people that you love. And sometimes it is a struggle. And I think I rationalize it too, because most people their work really isn't life or death. My work really is a life or death
Right.
thing. I'm
Sure.
an interventionist. I have families calling me all the time, overdose situation. I have 2 sober living houses. Like when my phone lights up and it's one of the guys
It's
from the
very
houses,
important.
I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,"
Sure.
like I have to take that call.
Right.
But at the same time, that is just some good old fashioned rationalization and justification.
Sure.
And the
But
truth is I'm just so
it's on
sad.
that line.
It's honest, but yeah. Well, and the guys know now too. I'm like, if I don't answer the phone because I'm doing something, if I don't answer the phone, if it's really an emergency, keep calling or send me a text and let me know I need to call
There
you
you
back
go.
immediately,
Yep.
because I
Perfect.
will glance at my phone and kind of stay in touch with it. I just don't have to always answer it.
Yep. I had to deal with that earlier this year. I'm on the same level as you with that now, though. Having a person who I view as a partner in the business is great, because there's certain times where like maybe I am doing bath time with my baby and I don't want to answer the phone
Right.
right now. Okay, I'm glad that I can feel confident enough to have another person that can. So
Yes. Yes. That's what I'm looking for.
it's a game changer for sure, because you can't do everything.
No, yeah, definitely. That's on my short list 2020 is to get some help because things are just too big and moving too
I
fast.
mean, you can do a lot. You can
Yeah,
do a lot.
I do a
But
lot.
can't do everything.
But it's also, you can only take it so far. And like I would say the same thing with my recovery or with my personal development, my business development. Like my listeners hear me talk about my own coaches all the time. Like
Sure.
I can get myself to a certain place, but if I want to push past those barriers for myself, I have to have somebody teach me to do that. I have to have somebody
Definitely.
that's already done it teach me how to do it. So, yeah, in my
But the
recovery
best
stories,
part is that you already know that about yourself, so you're already
yes.
gonna have the willingness to learn to get there.
Yes. I also know that I have to have accountability.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
I'm really good for
I have a
myself.
saying, radical accountability, like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I'm really good to a certain extent. But when it comes to real stuff and big stuff, I have to have accountability. I have to know somebody's
Sure.
watching.
Yeah, definitely. I think actually social media is great for that, if it's used in a proper way, because like you can be held accountable on social media. You better not tell your 10,000 followers that you're going to drop something and then you don't do it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's true. That's really true. Well, Connor, thank you so much for doing this with me. It was so nice to meet you and get to spend some time with you. I really appreciate you sharing your story with everybody.
It's been great. And I just want to say hats off to you, because you are using the internet in the most positive way that you possibly could. And I absolutely love it. And I think you're helping hundreds, if not millions of people.
Thank
So
you.
just because you have a certain follower number doesn't mean that that's the only people that see that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I love
And if
it.
one person saw it and didn't OD that day, you won.
Yes. Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. And for the listeners out there, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.